The topic of my course paper is Tools for Flipped Classroom. In the age of information technology, when all spheres of life demand something new and extraordinary, contemporary teachers try to invent some new ways and solutions in order to make schooling more interesting and provide their students with knowledge of very high quality. Let us figure out what the term flipped classroom actually means. Flipped classroom is a type of blended learning where students are introduced to the content at home and practice working through it at school. The topicality of our research is the method of flipped classroom is quite new nowadays. We have to determine all possible ways and tools which can help to organize the learning process. The aim of our research is to investigate and single out the most popular applications and materials for effective and interesting process of study. And the practical value is to use different interesting and useful tools in order to make schooling not only interesting but also highly qualified and effective. The tasks of our research are the following: to define the notion of flipped classroom and find its brief history, to compare approaches of scientists about it, to outline advantages and disadvantages of the method, to describe different applications and platforms which are the most convenient in this situation, and to investigate their methods of teaching different aspects and provide some practical examples. When we speak about the history of flipped classroom, it all began in Colorado with two teachers, Jonathan Bergman and Aaron Sams, who realized that there was no way to get materials to students who were out sick. In 2007, they began recording their lessons and lectures and turned them into videos. They then began to use it in their classrooms, calling it pre-broadcasting. The concept really took off. Various schools began flipping their classrooms, and the rest is history. There are 7 types of flipped classroom. The standard inverted classroom, the discussion-oriented flipped classroom, the demonstration-focused flipped classroom, the flipped classroom, the group-based flipped classroom, the virtual flipped classroom, and flipping the teacher. The advantages of flipped classroom are: flipped classrooms offer students the benefit of greater control over their learning. They steer class discussion to ask instructors for clarification, so their needs guide class time. Students can have more autonomy and they can explore new concepts in their own way, at their own pace, in a controlled and supportive environment. And disadvantages: it relies heavily on technology, with students needing to access the internet for at-home learning. It can make the digital divide between wealthy students and their poorer peers very obvious, and there are sometimes can be some technical issues. We decided to determine 4 major blocks, and each of them contains a lot of different apps, websites, and other platforms for studying. These blocks are communication and collaboration platforms. We singled out Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, Google Hangout, Skype. Every teacher chooses one which is more convenient for him and his students. Video platforms. They are TED, Mindvalley, YouTube. Using these platforms, students can watch different videos and podcasts or listen to lectures. Social media channels. Here we can include some very useful and interesting Telegram channels like Be in Progress, TED Self-Development, In Book We Trust, and others. Formative assessment tools: Classmarker, Google Forms, Online Test Pad, quizzes, and Kahoot. The flipped strategy puts more responsibility for viewing and interacting with content on the students and formative assessment if therefore needed after every video. And here we can speak about teaching aspects in the conditions of flipped classroom. Teaching pronunciation. We have several techniques. The first one is sound waves, which focuses on intonation and stress and may be suitable for the learners of any level. Students working at a computer with a headset read a sentence and hear it being said by a competent speaker of English. The second one is tongue twisters. Students can switch off their micros and repeat tongue twisters by themselves, and after class also practice more often. Teaching vocabulary using Quizlet. The teacher can create virtual flashcards with words. Moreover, the platform also suggests adding voice function to hear how the word is pronounced, using situational picture and the example of sentence where the word is, and using dictionaries. Activity is at home with do, make, and take, which is focused on collocations and suitable for students of elementary level. Teaching grammar through concept maps and graphic organizers. Using Canva to make a concept map or graphic picture of a particular topic, tenses, complex subjects, complex object, nouns, adjectives. In this case, students' visual memory plays a great role. Writing essays and discussing it in groups or breakout rooms. Consciousness-raising tasks which encourage students to notice characteristics and patterns related to form, meaning, and use while actively exploring the target grammar feature. And speaking. Students can read books and discuss them in groups, expressing opinions, summarizing the text, and looking at the language of the text. And also they can learn slang vocabulary and everyday English through the modern fiction and discussion of some critical thinking questions. At the end of our research, we came to some conclusions. The main task was to find all possible and the most convenient types of applications for flipped classroom. Some information about the notion of flipped classroom in general and its brief history was investigated. The next step was to compare all the advantages and disadvantages of flipped classroom. In the practical part, in details was explained how to deal with each application and where single out all the positive and negative features of each of them. And there were presented possible techniques, exercises, and other useful activities which could be interesting to deliver. And here we can see a glossary. In conclusion, this wonderful Chinese proverb actually expresses the main idea of flipped classroom. Your teacher can open the door, but you must enter by yourself. Thank you for attention.